Hello, everyone. In today's episode, I'm inviting us to think about two very different, extremely different roles we can take as a leader towards our people. The one of a gardener or the one of a carpenter. Want to hear more? Let's get started.
This is the Coaching Leader Podcast, a resource for modern, busy people leaders like you who know that just directing people simply does not work in the long run. We provide focused skill practice and the relevant thinking models, so you will ask better questions and make your team shine. Freshly served to you by IntelliCoach.org from hot and spicy Singapore.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So this is Mike again, sending you warm greetings from Singapore. I hope you're all well. So in this episode, as I said, I'll talk about the difference of two specific roles we can take as a leader towards our people. And it's quite inspired by a recent episode that I listened to on the NPR podcast, The Hidden Brain. It's something that I can really recommend. And it was an episode on parenting. And I found there are quite a lot of parallels. A parent and a child, there is a senior-junior relationship. And as parents, we want our children to thrive. We want them to succeed. And my hope is that most bosses want the same for their employees too. Of course, the similarities end somewhere because, we're not a family at work. And we know that very often. We wouldn't fire our kids. We will argue more, but we will not fire them. So, but there are certain similarities in approaches we can take. So in that podcast, two terms were introduced as part of two radically different parenting approaches. One was that of a gardener, and the other one was that of a carpenter. Now, what is the main difference? A carpenter, a woodworker, I would say, is somebody who directly shapes what they create. So their hands, their tools, they work on the object that they form. And that's usually wood as a carpenter. And I know that because we're also engaging a few of those right now because we're moving house. So carpenting is an important aspect, and it's a direct work. It's an art in a sense too. But the main attribute is that we are working on the object. The carpenter is really somebody who drafts plans, sticks to them. It's almost a linear model of success, if you think of it. The idea is that if you just do the right things, get the right skills, read the right books maybe, you're going to be able to shape what you want to do into a particular kind of person or product. And that's something which we often see in leadership theories too. We read the right books, we follow the right methods, we learn the right competencies as a leader. Is success guaranteed? We know it's not always that case, isn't it? The limitations of a carpenter are that they can manipulate wood, they can manipulate the object that they change, but when we are dealing with humans, with children, with adults, with the people who work with us, we are not dealing with an unchanging object. We are dealing with humans, and that's complex. I like the differentiation that I read once between the different types of problems or challenges that we can encounter: simple, complicated, and complex. Now, what's the difference? A simple problem is something where you can simply follow a recipe. The recipe is essential, yes, but the recipe is tested, it's proven, you follow the steps, and you are assured success. Now, this applies in many areas of our daily lives, doesn't it? So for many things like even cooking or putting up an IKEA shelf, following the recipe is key, understanding it first, of course, as well. But we have the chance to follow through. Then there are complicated problems. And complicated problems are simple problems, but with more steps in a way. And the nice example here is that sending a rocket to the moon is a terribly complicated problem. Yeah, there are a lot of critical steps that can go wrong, and we have to make sure that a lot of things fall into place and fit together. But in the end, when we learn how to send a rocket, we learn how to also send the next rocket. We can build a corpus of knowledge. And different rockets are also similar in a certain way. And there's quite a high degree of certainty of a good outcome if we follow the certain steps and if we have expertise in place. And a bit of optimism can help us here, especially optimism combined with knowledge. Then there is the challenge of raising a child. And that's what we call a complex problem. Because a formula has very limited application. And that's what we find when we ask parents who have multiple kids. What works with one doesn't work with the other. What works today doesn't work tomorrow. What works in the morning doesn't work in the evening. What works in sunshine doesn't work at night. So it is extremely frustrating. A complex problem requires something very differently from us. It requires that we look at each situation and person individually. And complex problems are usually involving people because people are complex. They're not complicated. That means they cannot be anticipated in their behavior. People are simply complex. And that's why in our difference between the carpenter and the gardener, taking a carpenter approach as a leader has a very limited effect. Because a potential linear model of success is hardly ever working. And that includes learning from a mentor, for example. So when we ask a mentor for their guidance on how we should lead our people, their guidance stems from their own experience. But our people are not repeatable objects. The person that your mentor led is very likely very different to the people you lead in seniority, background, experience, attitudes, and so forth. So if we learn from a mentor, we have to understand that we are not dealing with a repeatable situation here. Every situation, every person is unique. And that requires a bit of a different approach from us and a bit of a reluctance too to completely lead on books, on procedures, on workshops, because we have to be more open. And that's where the gardener comes in. So the gardener is a very different approach. The gardener is somebody who over time realizes the limitation of their control over what they want to shape. Now the gardener wants plants to grow. They want plants to bear fruits. They want them to flourish. Yet can they influence the plant themselves? Will they do that? Very rarely, to a very limited degree. They can only support it. They can only shape the environment. You can't control the weather as a gardener. You can't control your rain. You can't control the humidity. You can't control how the plant is moving, how the plant is growing. You can only shape the environment. You have a lot of variables in gardening, and that's to some people, encouraging. To some people, it drives them nuts, and I'm one of them, by the way, because I find gardening extremely unpredictable, and that's something that, holds me away from it. And in a company, for example, you cannot control other people. You cannot control their thoughts. They're not like a piece of wood. It's impossible. There are a lot of variables that are outside of your hand. And the most important thing for a gardener is that they are never sure what's going to happen in the garden. What's going to happen because of weather, because of environment, because of animals, because of bugs. And I'm sure you feel the same way when you lead or when you engage with other people, because we can hardly influence how days turn out. We go to work with a plan. We know what we want to do. We know which emails to respond, but You know that saying that strategy falls apart the moment the war begins? It's the same thing with most of you when you go to work. Things just happen out of nowhere. And that frustrates us if we go into work with a carpenter's mindset, with a mindset of linear success. But if we are going in with a gardener's mindset, we recognize what we actually have control over. And that is very often our own attitudes and some environmental attributes and variables. So the reason that a gardener is different is what they do is they create a rich, nurturing, but also variable, diverse, dynamic ecosystem in which many different things can happen. And it's a system that can respond well to situations that change in a very unpredictable kind of way. So what a gardener does, what a leader with a gardening mindset does, is they create or they focus a lot more on providing for their team a protective space in which a lot of unexpected things can happen. And that works a lot with children, because what I've read a lot is that children don't need as much direct guidance. They need a good degree of a safe environment, but a lot happens regardless of what we do, what we contribute or not. So the most important thing for a gardener is that they focus on helping their people thrive in a good environment. And leadership has also, I think, a name for that. It's called, in one way, the path-goal leadership theory. That's when, as a leader, I know where we need to go, but my role is to keep the path free. And I'm making sure I ensure you have all the resources you need as my team member. You're encouraged. You have everything you need to succeed. And in my view, it's a very good analogy for how we can change our mindset in our modern, very busy environment to just cope with the unpredictable nature of even a single day. What we do as a gardener is we help others make good choices by shaping their environment, giving them resources. We're helping our people, giving them a platform through very useful one-on-ones. We help them have the technical resources they need. We provide them an open, nurturing environment where we give them observations and we assume positive intent. But what we don't do is we don't say to people what exactly they have to do, on how they have to do their work in all minute details. That's micromanaging. And that is exactly how a carpenter would approach leadership. That is, I want to control the exact environment to ensure the outcome. But as we know, humans are not pieces of wood. And this piece of wood will reject and it will do different things. And then when we do even more carpenting on a human being, we get even more frustration because the human mind wants to be autonomous. That's what Dan Pink said. What we all want at work is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And autonomy is extremely useful. And when we go with a gardening mindset, we give people autonomy. And at the same time, because we are shaping the environment and we are not driving people on how they actually do their detailed work, we are automatically driven to asking questions instead of telling them what to do. We are more interested. So what should you do? Think about it for a moment. What kind of leader are you? Are you more of a carpenter or are you more of a gardener when it comes to leading your people? Do you feel like you want to follow a predictable linear process where you believe that you just have to follow steps 1 to 10 and then success as your leader must be ensured? And if not, it's the other people's issue? Or is it really that you understand the limitation of your control and you focus on creating a nurturing environment? And that is a gardener. Now, I do understand, as a leader coach, we have to do both. by virtue of our role as a leader and our obligation towards the company, we are a carpenter too. We shape certain things. But what I suggest is we have to be very focused on what that is. Because usually it doesn't relate to people, it relates to processes, it relates to setting very clear goals and outcomes and expectations. But where we should switch to a gardener mindset is to help people find their own way to grow. Because we cannot make them grow. We are not the plant. We're not shaping the plant itself. All we can do with humans is create a nurturing space for them to thrive. And hopefully they will accept that. If not, that's a different conversation, of course. But I find this analogy of a gardener and a carpenter a very useful one. I hope you did too. And that was it for this bit of a shorter episode. Just something to think about. Hope you like it. And I'll see you and hear you next week. Bye.
You have been listening to the Coaching Leader Podcast, your resource to activate strengths and coaching skills in leaders. Head over to IntelliCoach.org to check out our blog and offers. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast and leave a 5-star review on iTunes. Thank you for tuning in.
Hello everyone. Thanks for sticking around a little bit longer as usual. So, what do I have to share today? In terms of a business update, unfortunately not as much. I'm on a personal level very busy with moving house. That is all consuming, yet I've got some very interesting thing to share here. So, there's a small coaching tidbit that shows that very often we don't see the forest for the trees. And I've been so busy building aspects of my business that I forgot to ask myself what really good looked like. And it needed a coaching colleague and friend of mine who asked me that simple question. What does success look like in all areas of what you do? And that's such a powerful question. And it caught me off guard because it is something which everyone should know. Yet it is counterintuitive, but I don't. I'm really comfortable walking among the trees, but I don't look at the forest. I don't look at the big picture here. And it's an uncomfortable truth to realize you don't spend enough time understanding what really good looks like. So that's why I sat down a few days ago in 2 or 3 different sessions and defined that. And it's not as easy as I thought, but very helpful. Because I've been thinking about all aspects of what I use to deliver content, ideas, and coaching practices to you all. And it's not as easy right now for me to define success in that early part of the business. Now, I've been following other entrepreneurs for a while, and I know that in the beginning, before things move in a really solid and sustainable direction, you have to work hard, and that's what I'm willing to do. I have a lot of ideas on the kind of content that I want to bring to you all. That's why I define success in a way as my cadence of creation. And I found this one quote here by James Clear very useful. And he said, "We don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems." And I find this really useful. We don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And that recognizes in a way that however great goals and plans we have, what needs to happen is the daily grind, doing it, producing it. However, if we don't have goals and we don't have success ideas, and that was my trouble, even your daily systems lead nowhere. So that was an interesting little tidbit and insight that I just wanted to share with you as an additional idea. To just a few more words to the episode itself, I find the episode focus on carpenter and gardener a very useful one because a usual leader has both. And what I often see is that we perceive the need to extend the carpenter in all areas of what we do. We try to feel and extend control into areas where there never can be any control, because we can never really control other people. Ultimately, we do not control them. It is much more useful to, sort of in my view, assume the Stoic philosophy of really focusing on what you can control and influence. And that is your own attitude, your own thinking, and shaping the environment that other people grow up in or do their work. And I think doing this and following the gardener mindset can really help. And I want to challenge everyone. I didn't do that in the episode itself, but I'll do it here. To challenge yourself, where in your life do you apply the gardener mindset and where are you a carpenter? And you might have some interesting insight, because it might not be a good alignment right now. Something which I saw in myself when I started leading people some years ago. I've been very much a carpenter, and a well-meant carpenter, because I wanted to shape the people and the environment in the best way possible. But then always things happen which I did not expect. And that led me through that way to realize the limitations of my approach, of what I can control. Just wanted to share that with you. I hope this is useful. And I'll talk to you next week. All the best. Bye.